Welcome back to another episode of the Hormone Hub podcast, where we talk all things perimenopause, menopause, and have the conversations no one else is having. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. Hello, ladies, and welcome back to the Hormone Hub. I am your host, Kylie Pinwill, and today I feel like I'm going to be a bit self-indulgent. I thought I would introduce myself. We have lots of new members of our community, lots of new listeners, and I thought it's about time I reintroduced myself, because you're probably wondering, who is this woman anyway? So I thought today we would cover who I am, my kind of background, my hormonal history, how I sort of got to be working in this space with so many women, what I do, and how I sort of look after my own hormones, and then also how I can best help you as well. So strap on in and let's go. Alrighty, so I am 52 years old. I live on the Sunshine Coast in Australia, which is a really beautiful part of the world. I am a Sydney girl at heart, though. I grew up on the Northern Beaches, and we moved to the Sunshine Coast about 7 years ago, I think. Yeah, obviously coming from the Northern Beaches to the Sunshine Coast, love the beach. So I've just really taken it to a warmer water, really. Big traveler. At 17, I had never been overseas. My heart was set on going overseas. So I landed in Sweden, of all places, as an exchange student. And how I ended up in Sweden is I opened the map, and I think it was actually a globe at that stage, spinning the globe. Where was the furthest place from Australia? And it was, I think it was either Sweden, Finland, or Norway. So Sweden it was. So had an amazing year, and still to this day in touch with a lot of my Swedish host family, who are just gorgeous people. So their now adult children have come and stayed with us, are now friends with our children, and my grown-up children, which is really nice. So beautiful relationship. So I have 3 teenage kids, 19, 16, and 14, so 2 boys and a girl. So fun times, as you can imagine, with a 14-year-old girl. Anyone else feeling my pain, let me know. But she's fine. Has her moments. And I think it's the butt of 2 kind of strong personalities coming together. I have a border collie and have been happily married, for the most part, for the last 22 years to my beautiful husband, Sean. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. So we left Sydney. We travelled. We didn't come straight to the Sunshine Coast. So we sold up in Sydney and then spent a year with the 3 kids travelling around Australia, which was amazing. So it was kind of like before it was a thing to do. So well before COVID. And the kids were in primary school. And it was seriously one of the most amazing experiences. And, the kids still talk about it. So all the other fancy holidays, and they talk about, living in a van. So how I kind of, came to be working in this space. So I've been in the health and fitness industry forever. So back in would have been the early 90s, when I was at uni teaching Les Mills aerobic classes in a fluoro G-string leotard. So that was me. Loved it. Wasn't particularly coordinated, terrible at step classes and all of that, but loved it and had a ball doing it. So I've always been interested in, health, wellness, fitness, that side of it. I did, after a little stint in, corporate sales and things like that, go into personal training, although very briefly, because I realized pretty quickly as a personal trainer that spending 1 hour with someone while they're on the treadmill or on the rower or, lifting weights was not really going to have a huge impact on the other 7 hours or 7 days a week, and the other 23 hours of that day. So So I really got into, and being a foodie, I love my food. Anyone who's sort of been in my world for a long time knows that I love my food, I love my coffee, and I love my wine. So, being a nutritionist isn't about being perfect by any means. It's about, how can we fit this into daily life? Where's the balance? And, I think that's what I've always loved doing. I have, definitely had struggles with my weight. I came back from Sweden, and it was interesting because I remember when they left, we were in a big sort of meeting with all the exchange students, and they said to us, you'll go overseas and you'll put on 15 kilos. And I was like, what? That's a lot of weight. And then sure enough, I went overseas and I put on 15 kilos. And I think, it was funny how the mind works, because I think because it was expected of us, we made it our mission to do that, which is, the logic in that is crazy. But, as a 17-year-old, in Sweden, I ate all the fika, I ate all the cheese, all the things. So, and I had a ball. Did, very easily lose that weight when I got home. And, and again, pregnancies, weight went up. And then while I was pregnant with my middle son, I had a tumor on my thyroid. So I actually had half my thyroid removed back at that point. And I didn't really realize, I had no choice but to get it out. There was sort of some sus cells going on, and it ended up being benign. But so didn't really realize at the time what that meant for my future metabolism to have that thyroid taken out. So I, went through years of on and off medications, stronger, weaker, tried it, didn't work, didn't feel good, and, the whole range of trying to get that balance back. And then, realized it came down to managing my stress and nourishing my body. If I was doing those two things, my thyroid was good. If I was particularly stressed, particularly wound up, particularly, over a period of time, when the kids were young, gosh, things were not good. But definitely I learnt what was likely to flare up my thyroid or slow it down, and, how I needed to manage to keep it sort of more even. So, and it was definitely a long period of trial and error. Then, and today, thyroid's good. Again, I need to manage my stress, and I'll go into a bit more about that I'll go into why that is so. Mixing up and losing my words again. So, also in the throes at 52 of perimenopause. So, so managing my thyroid. Now, medication free, and I haven't been taking medication for my thyroid for years. And, for me personally, everyone is different. Everyone has a different reason why they're on thyroid medication. But for me, it was definitely, a good thing to manage it more with stress management and diet as well. So, so after I did my stint as a PT, I realized that wasn't really where I wanted to be. So, and apart from the fact that I preferred my own time in the gym, training myself versus training other people. So then I went back to study. I studied at Nature Care in Sydney, 1,000 years ago, and I studied nutritional medicine, which, was amazing. And it just gave me such a good insight into how everything in our body is connected and how important the nutrients from food is. So if we are feeding our body the nutrients that it needs to be well, our body is going to be well. If we're feeding it processed foods that our body doesn't know what to do with, our body is not going to be well, when we do that. And seriously, that's what it comes down to. So definitely, so I started off when I graduated, I was working in clinic, and look, I loved it, but, I really felt as a practitioner that there was a real sort of disconnect, because I would have a woman come in and see me in clinic. We would have a great session. We would go through, how she was feeling, what was going on for her. And then, she would go. And she'd book in for a month's time. And, she'd come back in a month's time and, life gets busy. So she'd sort of implemented some of the things we talked about. She'd forgotten about some of the things we'd talked about, and she was, for the most part, things were tracking, feeling okay. And then, a month later, she'd book in again, and then, there'd be a cancellation. So then, the dog got sick and had to go to the vet, or one of the kids, needed to go to the doctor, or whatever it was. So, I would just have those 2 appointments with her, but I always sort of felt that I didn't have the opportunity to facilitate real change, in her life to make things better. And, sometimes I would see those clients afterwards and they were sort of like, oh yeah, and I get it, oh, I went to a nutritionist and, it didn't really work. But, how can it when, we had just 2 sessions together and, no kind of, because in that hour appointment, you don't have time to help people sort of, how that then gets implemented into their life. So yeah, it was sort of, I found it challenging. I enjoyed it, but found it challenging. And I didn't know that there was another way to work. So then when I moved to Queensland, I, it still started working with some of my clients from Sydney. So we were doing it online, and this sort of changed everything. And it was before online, it was before telehealth, it was before all of that before COVID. So I was already up running Zoom appointments with clients. And what that allowed me to do, because there was no sort of travel time to the clinic, there was no waiting if I was running late, it just meant that people could contact me at a time, or we could make our appointments at a time that suited them better. And when they could sit down, relax, and then actually take in, the information, and we could have a real conversation about what was going on. So that was sort of how I started working online. But then going back to sort of how I started in the perimenopause and menopause zone was when we, finished traveling around Australia, we moved to the Sunshine Coast, like I said. So, and looking back, it was kind of like the writing was on the wall that something was going to go sideways. So we just moved state. We were settling our kids into a brand new school. We didn't know a single person here. We were also building a house at the time. So we were renting, we only had bits of our furniture because everything was still in storage, starting a new business. So there was a lot going on. And I hit a wall. Okay. So my thyroid kind of took a bit of a dive, and then that dragged my adrenals down with it. And, I was just like, what is going on? I started putting on weight. I was cranky. I was tired all the time. And I think it was that fatigue was the biggest thing. I would just get to lunchtime and I couldn't get off the lounge. So I knew something wasn't right. So went, of course, as we do, went and saw the doctor and did all the blood tests. And guess what? Everything was normal. I'm just like, no, this is not right. So then, I sort of took, because, and I can do this because, this is what I do for a living. So I sort of took my blood tests, and then I looked at, where I was sitting in the, the normal range versus the optimal range. Now, normal range of blood tests is quite wide, and we generally get blood tests done when we don't feel well. So when we are sitting on the outside of normal, we can still be normal, but we feel like rubbish. So when we are, and then when you look at that, when we're in the optimal range, that's where we feel well, and that's where we are well. Okay. And that's where we want to be, is in that normal range, optimal range. So I was sitting on the outside for so many markers for iron, thyroid, my liver was all over the place because, traveling around Australia for a year, there was a fair amount of wine consumed that year, not a healthy amount, I have to say. But, and things were out, definitely out. So I had a good chat to my GP at the same time. And I said to her, because I'd had a marina in, it was my second marina, and I just didn't feel right, and I couldn't put my finger on what it was. So I had a really great chat to her. She was amazing. She said, yep, let's book you in. She didn't take the marinas out. So there was one sort of doctor in the clinic who happened to own the clinic. She said, book in with this guy and, he'll take it out for you. I said, okay. So I was working on, cleaning up my diet. I was working because the sugar cravings, that was the other thing, were insane. So, I was working on my sugar cravings, reducing my sugar consumption, cutting out my alcohol consumption. I was very reliant on coffee. So, again, it was making the conscious decision to cut back. Now, I'm not a big fan of cutting out. I think for when you're going to make changes that are going to be long-term changes, if you have a look at, okay, if you're drinking every night, okay, can we cut that down to the weekends? If you are just a weekend drinker and you drink, 4 or 5 glasses on the weekend, can we cut it down to 1 or 2? If you drink, 2 large coffees a day, can we cut it down to 2 small coffees a day? So it's not about cutting things out, but it's about, okay, let's reduce that load on your liver and let's reduce that load on your body. So I was consciously cutting down on the things that I knew my body didn't need. I stopped because I was also running at that point. So I would get up in the morning. We've got a border collie. So I would get up and run, 10 Ks. And it was just nuts. And, so I switched running for walking, which, was absolutely my adrenals and my cortisol levels just went, thank you. She stopped finally. So there was a lot of things going on and I wasn't doing myself any favors. So I really had a good look at, what did I need to change? So going back to getting my Mirena taken out. So in the meantime, I had also done a Dutch test for my hormones. So this is kind of like, and now I, tend not to do hormone testing for women. I tend to talk to you, what are your symptoms? What are you going through? How are you feeling in your own body? Now, the reason I do this, because our blood tests aren't great for testing hormones, because our hormones are fluctuating on a daily, if not an hourly basis. So, blood tests aren't ideal. So what I did at the time was a urine and a saliva test. So what came back was that my estrogen was sky high and my progesterone was pretty much down the toilet. So it was that imbalance of estrogen and progesterone, and triggered by so many things. So triggered by stress, triggered by a dicky thyroid, my thyroid levels were out, everything was just out of balance. So what I decided to do was, take that Mirena out and just start from scratch, like let my body kind of like find where it was. So at the time I was probably about 43, 44 maybe. I can't remember exactly, but it was sort of like early to mid 40s. So booked in to have the Mirena out. Now, when I rocked up for that appointment, it was, this guy, typical overweight, not very inspiring kind of GP. And I've gone in there and I said, I'm here to have the Mirena taken out. And he didn't ask me anything. He didn't ask me about my symptoms, how I was feeling, why I wanted it taken out, nothing. So my personal GP, she, and I had a great conversation about it and she was on board. This guy's come in not knowing anything about me. And he said to me, he goes, "You'll be back in a month," begging me to put this back in. And I just looked at him and I was just like, sorry, mate, I'm not going to be begging you to do anything. And then, he was just such an arrogant cockhead, for a better word. And he was like, "Oh, you'll be begging me to put this, back in. It's the best thing for every single woman." And I was just like, oh, and he really got my cackles up. And then, okay, so he took the Mirena out and that was all fine. And then I'm getting dressed and I come out of the little cubicle and he says to me, "Here you go." And he's handed me 2 scripts. One was for synthetic estrogen HRT. Okay, now I was 43, 44 at the time, and had tested my estrogen sky high. So he's given me a script for more synthetic estrogen. I was like, oh my God. And another script for the Mirena, because apparently I'd be back begging him. And then he said to me, he goes, "I've treated thousands of women and they all love this stuff." And I was like, oh, and by this stage, I was ropeable. I was furious. And I was furious more so because, I knew that I wasn't going to touch the estrogen, and I knew that I wasn't going to be back for that Marina. But what kind of like really got to me was how many women would have just, would he have intimidated into doing what he said? And that was what got to me. I was like, well, hang on a sec. I know my body well enough to know that that is exactly what I do not need. Like if I've already got high estrogen, why would I load synthetic estrogen on top of my already naturally high levels? So anyway, yeah, I was absolutely livid. So anyway, so that was kind of what kickstarted me down the whole sort of journey of perimenopause, because then I was talking to a friend who's also a colleague, and I was saying, oh, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm tired. Look at my, I'm putting on weight. I'm fat. Even my eyelids are fat. I feel gross. I'm, just disgusting. And I can't eat, I can't even think about getting through the day without 600 coffees and, a load of chocolate. And she's looking at me and she goes, you're in perimenopause. And I went, get out. Okay, I was a bit ruder than that. And I was like, get out. And she's like, no, you are. And I was like, no, I'm not old enough for that yet. Because when I went through college, we spent a lot of time working on periods and fertility. Maybe 5 minutes on menopause and 0 time on perimenopause. So we never learnt about it in college. So like if we're not learning at that, doing a health degree, how then does the general public know about this, right? So she's sort of like, no, she goes, off you go, you're in perimenopause. I was like, no. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, I hate you. She's actually a really good friend. But it was just, I couldn't see it in myself, but she could see it, a mile away. And then, when I went down sort of a bit more like self-discovery, it was indeed perimenopause. So high circulating levels of estrogen, low progesterone, a cranky, irritable, moody, feeling chunky, you tired, exhausted, all of the things, brain fog, all of it. So yeah, it was crazy. So yeah, so I sort of put myself on this journey of, getting the right balance of food back. So, definitely, working on supporting my blood sugar, getting my digestive system, back under control, learning to manage my stress. So that was a big one. And, self-care, all of the things that I preach to you guys all the time. So yeah, so that kind of like triggered off, that whole journey for me through perimenopause and menopause, and I think as our body changes, and we come out of our 20s and 30s, we need to figure out how to work more holistically with our body and how to work with our hormones. So this goes a bit beyond diet and exercise. So, counting calories, that whole calorie deficit thing. When we've got this hormonal kind of cascade happening in the background, it just doesn't cut it. So that's why, I hear from women all the time, they go on this 2-week, I've been on this for 2 weeks, it didn't work. I did that for 2 weeks, it didn't work. I did this for 2 weeks and it didn't work. It's because we don't need diet, that diet and exercise. So just eat less and move more. It doesn't work. We need to address our hormones, 100% when we're, even from late 30s through our 40s into our 50s. So, and I think when you understand what your body's going through, how your body's changing and how to work with it, it's absolutely life-changing. So it's, kind of become my mission, I guess, to educate and empower women to understand their bodies, what's normal and what's not. Just because something is common and it happens to a lot of women doesn't mean it's normal. Okay. And, also to get you to a place where you feel empowered to make informed choices about your own health, to avoid the scenario of what I went through with Dr. Dinosaur. Because I think when you understand your body, you know where you're at, you know what to ask for, so if you do want to go down that HRT path, you know that there's better options. If you're in perimenopause, you do not need more estrogen, unless you're in late stage perimenopause. But if you were in early perimenopause, you need progesterone. You don't need more estrogen because your estrogen is already high. So, all of those nuances is what I really want to, sort of help support women, to understand what's going on. So definitely not a diet approach. It's a balanced hormone approach. So with my own kind of body, and I talk about this with my clients the other day, and we do inside my Well Balanced Woman program, we do sort of group calls on a weekly basis. And I was talking to the ladies a couple of weeks ago about my own non-negotiables. So these are just things, it's like brushing my teeth. I don't have to think about this, it just flows. So every single day, and look, I'm not perfect, so not every single day, but most days, I move my body. Our bodies were designed to move. Our bodies weren't necessarily designed to do F45 6 days a week, but our bodies were designed to move. So whether that for you looks like walking or jogging or hiking or stretching or yoga, Pilates, swimming, it doesn't matter what you are doing as long as you are moving, and moving in a way that, you don't feel exhausted afterwards and need a nap. Moving in a way where you feel energized afterwards, and, choose something you enjoy. There is no point choosing or doing an exercise that you don't enjoy just for the sake of doing exercise. My other non-negotiable is having something green at every single meal. Now, this is, if you've been in my world, you also know that I'm pretty lazy when it comes to cooking and food prep. I always have in my fridge a plastic container, it's a Tupperware container thing that breathes, a container full of spinach and a container full of rocket. So I can grab a handful of rocket or a handful of baby spinach at any given point during my day, and I can put that in the blender for my smoothie. I can put that on my plate and put my eggs on top. I can put that on my, if I'm going to have a wrap for lunch with my wrap, at least I've got color there. My kids, if they've cooked themselves, because I'm also not loving being in the kitchen. I know a nutritionist who doesn't love cooking, go figure. I love cooking when I've got the time to cook, and but the daily dinner, what's for dinner? Like, I really don't care. It's not into it. I'm the worst wife in the world. Luckily, my husband is awesome. He cooks. But my kids, if they've cooked their own breakfast and they've just got a plate of brown food, so they might have, eggs, toast, bacon, I will say to them, where's the green stuff? And, get out the container. They'll all roll their eyes, but they'll all put that green stuff on their plate. So having something green. I always have a bottle of water with me when I get in the car. So I've got a big stainless steel 1 litre water bottle, and that comes with me everywhere I go. I've since found out, apparently in Queensland, it is illegal to drink or eat in your car. Don't know why, don't ask me why, and I've never heard of anyone being pulled over for it, but my defense is water is essential to life if ever I get busted for that. But I make sure I finish that, like if I'm doing the school run, I make sure I finish that bottle of water by the time I get home. If I'm going to Pilates or going to the gym, I'll start drinking it on my way and I'll finish it on my way home. So I've had a litre of water, every time I get in the car. And likewise, before I switch my computer off at night, I make sure that bottle that I keep on my desk is empty. So, sometimes at 5:30 at night, I am sitting here sculling a litre of water, but, at least I've got that water in. My other non-negotiable is listening to my body. So I rest when I need to. If I feel, and I now know my own warning signs. So having had adrenal fatigue, having only half a thyroid, I go downhill pretty fast. And I think once you've had any kind of adrenal issues, chronic fatigue, adrenal fatigue, burnout, whatever you want to call it, you do a dance with it. So you've had it and you are more susceptible to, going down that rabbit hole again. So now I know when I need to stop. Now I know when I need to slow down. Now I know when I need to rest. I know when I need to just put boundaries up. And this is boundaries with my clients, boundaries with my team, boundaries with my family, that no, I cannot be switched on 24/7, and I generally have pretty high energy levels, but I can crash and get really low. So to me, reading an hour or so on the weekend, oh my God, I have just finished reading the Seven Sisters series. Oh, if you love reading and you haven't got into that yet, I highly recommend it. Lucinda Riley, there's 8 books in the series, and I read them back to back to back. So good. So just a little aside there. Always happy to do, book recommendations with anyone as well, because I do love to read. And that actually just ignited my whole passion for reading. So I will sit and read. Okay. My other non-negotiable is I get up, I go to bed at 9:30 every single night. Okay. Except if the Matildas are playing in a semi-final, because, the Matildas, aren't they awesome? But I make sure that I'm in bed then, and I make sure I'm up at 6 o'clock every morning. So, I do love that. If I don't get up at 6 and get out the door and move my body, it doesn't happen. So, that's my non-negotiable. So I hope that kind of helps, and, I really encourage you to sort of sit back and go, okay, well, where are your non-negotiables as well? So I have, there's lots of ways that I can help. There's lots of ways that we can work together. Obviously, I have this podcast, which is amazing. We are coming up to 80 episodes, which is really fun. So I haven't missed a week. So I'm very committed to getting this out every week. We've got some amazing guests coming up. So, feel free to give me feedback on, topics that you'd like to hear. I want to, have this as interactive as I can. We also have our Hormone Hub community. So there's, 10,000 women in that community. So there's lots going on in there. We also have plenty of free resources for you inside that community to help. So if you need help with stress or weight gain or fatigue or anxiety, whatever it is, let us know. We can hook you up with the right resources. Then if you would like to take things further and work with me, you absolutely can. So we have the Well Balanced Woman program, and we are about to do a bit of a rebrand and call it the Hormone Code and, do an upgrade. So we're constantly doing an upgrade. And this is where we look through, we work together really closely in that time. So we do telehealth appointments, we do food sensitivity testing, and then work through, those we get the foundations right of your nutrition. Then we walk through and we, have a look at the foundations of your body and the underlying causes. So we make sure that your digestive system is working well. We make sure you're absorbing the nutrients from your food and eliminating properly. So many women, suffer bloating, constipation, diarrhea. We want to address that because, no one is happy feeling constipated and bloated, and it's not normal. Very common, but not normal. So we want to address that digestive system. We want to support your liver, and this is so important because this is where we this is where we clear our excess hormones. This is where we clear cholesterol. This is where we support your blood sugar response. If you've got fatty deposits in your liver, you're going to feel sluggish. Okay. And, just looking after that whole system is really important. Managing your stress and giving you, the tools to bring down that, we all have chronically elevated levels of cortisol. We run around like crazy chooks, and, we just need to literally calm the farm. So, using those tools to get those cortisol levels down, because if you're running around constantly with elevated cortisol levels, your thyroid's going to be affected, your hormones are affected, your digestive system is affected, your blood sugar is affected, so we need to address all 4 of those pillars so your body works well, so the inflammation comes down, so your energy comes back, you sleep better, and if weight loss is your goal, that's when the weight loss happens, is after we've fixed those underneath things. So we've got two versions of the Well Balanced Woman. So one is sort of like our VIP program where you work really closely with me, and the other is our self-study version. So this is where you still get all the great content, still get the guidance. You have access to me through our VIP, support group. And, so you're not doing it totally on your own, but, that's definitely a more, I guess, economical way of going through it if you, feel that you're okay without that one-on-one support. And then we have our weight loss wisdom program. So that is for ladies who, I call it our down and dirty weight loss. We get in, we get the weight off, and, then we help you keep it off as well. So that one's more weight loss focused, whereas the Well Balanced Woman is more sort of holistic. All right. Well, who knew that I had so much to say? Well, okay, we all know I have a lot to say. But anyway, I hope that sort of, you got to know me a little bit better. And, I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear about, what you're going through, how I can help, just even if you traveled around Australia, if you have a border collie, if you are also dealing with teenage children, hit reply, let me know. Yeah, and that's it. And I think, connection with other people is so important. And, you're part of the Hormone Hub community now. And, and I really want to thank you as well for listening to all my ramblings and for being part of my beautiful community. All right, well, that's it from me. Bye for now, and I will see you in the next episode. Hello, I see you there. Juggling work, family, life, all while navigating perimenopause and menopause. But guess what? Maybe it's time to break up with the hustle and grind. Going on a retreat is more than just about a vacation. It's an investment in your well-being and a step towards a happier, healthier you. So take a moment, consider the benefits of a retreat, and give yourself the gift of rejuvenation and self-care. Self-care is all about giving the best of you, not what's left of you. I want you to save $500 now. Jump in for the Reignite You retreat. We're running in Bali in April 2024 and October 2024. And yes, we sure do have payment plans available. See you there. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. You can head on over to the show notes at kyliepinwill.com/podcast, where you'll find all the links. Now, before we go, it would mean the world to me if you'd head on over to your favorite podcast channel, subscribe, and leave a review. Don't forget to share it with your friends. Then stay tuned for next week's episode, and I can't wait to see you then.